Children are heritage of God and a gift to parents. No wonder parents are instructed to bring them up in the way of the Lord, so that when they grow, they will not depart from it. But in this time and age, how easy or difficult that is what we are about to find out. I am Olujoke Mosaku on Let's Talk with the topic, training up a child in this time and age. With me is Mr. Sheyi Shalom, a children's teacher. Stay with us. Good to have you. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, so what is the place of a parent in the life of a child? And I also want to add that, is parenting supposed to be a difficult task or not?
The place of parenting in the life of a child, and that is a very, very important role for every child. A very important Parents have a very, very important role to play in the life of children, and that can never be overemphasized. And it is very, very obvious the outcome of children um, without the care or the nurturing of a parent. I mean, it is not that does not mean they're probably not going to turn out well, but only by the help of God do you see a child without, a proper um, parenting, a proper presence of parents. Only with the grace of God you see them turn out very well, very, very well. So you cannot really overemphasize the place of parenting in the life of a child.
In other words, parenting is not supposed to be difficult. Is that what you're saying?
Parenting is not necessarily difficult, but I would say emphatically that parenting is not a function of skills and expertise. It's not a function of theories and philosophies
Okay.
either. So parenting is a function of grace. Is a function of grace. Yeah, I would say that because growing up as a child, there are some things that my parents never taught me about doing or never taught me to do or not to do. And there's some things that my mom would stop me from doing, but my dad would allow me do, or my dad will not stop me from doing, and my mom will allow me do. And I'm left in between to choose, the right path to follow. But as a function of grace, as a function of my parents teaching me in the way of the Lord. So the presence of God's own word allows a child, when they come in a crossroads, to know which path to follow. So that means it is not actually a function of a function of their skills and expertise. God's word or God's own discipline has a part to play also. So it is not to say whether it is difficult or necessarily easy, but I know that parents have a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Okay. So, what roles are parents expected to play in a child's formation process? I wanted us to look at the love and the logic aspect.
In a child's formation?
Yes, the formation process. So, basically, there's a love kind of aspect and the logic kind of aspect, because children are a handful. So, you need to be wise with them, actually.
Growing up as a child, I happened to be a very, very tough child. And my parents tried, they really tried. My dad tried, my mom tried. But one thing that actually helped me the most is the presence of love. I remember so much growing up, I was really, really much of a tough child, and I was my mom had to send me to a sister's place somewhere in Lagos, Nigeria, to live with her for a couple of years because she happened to be a disciplinarian. And upon getting there, I realized that in as much as I was disciplined, the rod was never spared, but she engrossed me with so much love. And she started seeing, putting herself in my place, in my shoes, to kind of in order just to get my own understanding of life. And by that doesn't mean she didn't spank me. I mean, she spanked hell out of me, and uh, but she showed me so much love that in times when I begin to do the things that I'm not supposed to do, when I'm alone, when I'm left to be by myself, I start thinking and using my head. I'm like, oh, am I really doing the right thing? That is not because I don't want to be spanked, but that is because I start thinking about the love and how I'm going to make her feel as a mother. And eventually, the love overcame, the bad attitude or the bad habit, and I eventually began to be, gradually decided to, turn out to be a good child. And
Hmm.
I'm still
Thank God
growing.
for that.
Yeah.
Is there a right or wrong way of training a child?
Oh yeah, of course. There's a right and wrong way. I mean, and I believe that every child, every parent should have principles.
Mhm.
I always say in most cases that the reason why many of us don't actually excel in whether business relationship or family is because we don't even abide by our own principles, not by God's own principle. We've learned from God, we've learned from our pastors and mentors, and we've got experiences together, and we are able, God helps us to come up with a principle for our life, and we can't even abide by it. We wiggle, we kind of fluctuate by, and we get moved by emotions and feelings. Like, for example, a child steals, for example, takes what does not belong to him or what does not belong to her. You know, you don't spare the child of correction or chastisement
Mhm.
because he or she is crying, or for example, a child disrespects you in public and someone decides to chastise the child right in your presence. You don't try to scold the person in return right where the child is. You can scold the person later, but don't ever make your child feel too spoiled or too safe in your presence, even when they commit a crime. So yeah, because that's a very that I would consider that a wrong way to train a child. And there are so many aspects we can also consider because children ministry for me is broad and versatile, and it only takes the grace of God and the knowledge of God to actually be able to raise a child in the right way, to raise a child in such a way that they are incorruptible. Yeah, so there's a right way and there is a wrong way of raising a child.
So, what are the right and wrong ways?
Okay, like I cited an example, you don't spoil your child even when you know that they are in the midst of crime or in the midst of indiscipline. So you don't pamper a child that is doing something wrong. You make it known, you make it clear. You don't follow your emotions and say, oh, he or she is crying, then I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to wait till he or she is calm. No, you have to learn to say the truth all the time. You don't always, you don't make your child feel or have a myopic understanding that life is all about being happy. That's a very, very wrong discipline. I've seen a lot of parents, especially in this part of the world, that make their child feel like they are meant to be happy all the time. Like I've always said, life is not all about being happy all the time. Life is mostly about sacrifices. There are some scenarios whereby, for example, I have an interview today right now. I feel really, really tired. I've done a lot of things today. Does it make me happy to be on this platform to share experiences? Not exactly, but it gives me joy to share what I know about children's ministry. So
Mm.
there's a level that supersedes happiness, which is joy. And you cannot attain joy except with sacrifice. You can only attain that level with sacrifice. So it is not a good thing to make your child know that they can always get what they want. Like a child, you take a child to the store, it says, I want this, you give them this. You said, I want this, you give them this. No. And the reason why most parents do this is because they always feel like, oh, I suffered growing up, then I have to make sure that my child gets everything. No, a child does not have to get everything they want.
Okay, going forward, are there factors to consider in training up a child? And in case there are, what are they?
And there are factors. What kind of, what do you mean? What do you imply?
As a children's teacher, I know there is a way you penetrate into the kids. So basically, maybe there are things that parents are missing out in penetrating into their child, aside, especially the stubborn ones who has become a prayer point for their parents?
I feel like parents are also, before going to the factors, I feel like parents are also major contributors too. In as much as God's grace is sufficient, I mean, God's grace is needed for parenting. We, just like you cited, wrong ways and right ways. I feel like parents also take the place of fellowship or the place of Christianity likely while raising their children. You know, I've seen a lot of parents that keep their children away from Bible studies, that keep their children away from church activities or group activities, and just because they feel like that is not medicine, that is not sciences, that is not geography. So I don't want my child doing Bible all the time and missing out on school activities. There's no way that your child will be firm. There's no way your child will be smart with with things of the Bible and not do well with things in school. So parents avoid their children from from anything that has to do with the Bible, that anything that has to do with fellowship, just because they believe it interrupts, their children's school activities. So eventually, 10 years later, 20 years later, the child grows up and becomes a tout or becomes a prayer point, and they now start looking for help. Oh, who's going to help my child? Oh, what can you advise me about my child? But when the child was growing up, you took the child away. You drew the child away from God. You did not want him to be in presence of God. You took, a lot of other things caught your attention, like sports. Take them out for movies, one vacation or the other. They never spent time studying God's word, even from childhood, even from 5 years or 6 years. Now, talking about the factors, one of the factors that is important to consider is trust. A child must be able to trust you. If a child trusts you, then you are good to go. Number one, a child needs to be able to trust you. It's a very, very important factor to consider. A child needs to be able to trust you. Once a child develops a trust in you, then they see reason why they should follow you. They see reason why they should obey you, why they should listen to you. Number two, you have to live by example. For example, I've always said a parent who always complain about their child not loving to read or not wanting to read. How many times have you picked up a newspaper? How many times have you picked up a magazine right in their presence? You ask your child to go read a book or read their books or do their homework in the living room or in their various rooms, and you are there in the living room with the YouTube or with the Netflix and turned down to the highest volume, watching one movie or the other that can even distract them. So there is no way you tell them to do that. You are doing something that is not very, very significant, and you expect them not to pick up their tablet while they are in their rooms. So you have to be able to lead by example. You have to be able to gain their trust. You have to be able to love them genuinely. Children know when you love them and they know when you don't. And loving a child is not by buying and buying and buying. No, not at all. You have to be able to love your child in a way that God has destined or God has already planned for us. The Bible says God does all things by predestination. You have to love your child in the way that, there are principles that God has already laid in the Bible for us. You have to just follow those principles. For example, a child sees it as more fun and more loving for you when they ask you for something. For example, a child asks you, oh, I want an iPhone 11 Pro. And maybe the child is, let's say, 12 years old or 13 years old. Well, normally, an iPhone 11 Pro is very, very expensive, and nobody will stop you from doing that for your child. But how would a child look among his or her peers? I mean, very, very rich. Oh, you have an iPhone 11 Pro. Oh, your dad is rich, your mom is rich. There's nothing wrong in you getting that for your child. But how can you get that phone for your child in love? Well, engage the child in a task. Let's say, oh, you want iPhone 11 Pro? Oh, that's easy. I can get that for you. You know what? Let's do something. While I wash my car in the morning. You help me clean the inside, I clean the outside. If you can do that for...
Is that not negotiation?
Yeah, it's exactly negotiation. Okay, if you can do that for 1 month, you can do that for 2 months, I get your iPhone 11 Pro. The child is not going to complain. The child will see that as a gain. Or, you know what? I don't want to engage you with too much school activities, but if you can at least get an 85 overall, you know what? I'm going to get you an iPhone 11 Pro. In fact, I'm going to get you something else to add to it. The child says that, oh my God, oh, but dad, I don't, I'm not very, very smart and all that. You know what? Just prove yourself and encourage the child to do that kind of thing. Or you know what? Hey, I want you to, just engage the child with something, but not in a strict way, because a child, like I said, a child knows when you truly love them. Not, oh, last semester you got a D in your schoolwork, so I'm not going to get you nothing. You know what? If you can get an A, I'm going to get you something. No, that is not saying something out of love. You have to be able to calm down, put yourself in their mood, act as a child. Sometimes it's necessary for us. There's a place for you to act as a father. There's a place for you to act as a friend. There's a place for you to act as a child. Parents have to learn that. You don't be a father all the time. You be a father, at the same time be a friend, or be a mother, at the same time be a friend, and be a sister, and be a child. You have to be able to come down to their level and think what they are thinking. So finally, parents have to be able to be more often constructive as opposed to being instructive. So what I mean by that is that, for example, when you're chastising your child, it's not a crime when you chastise them firmly and in a very straightforward manner. But sometimes it is important for you to be constructive. And what I mean by that is, for example, your child is being so playful and always coming with a D and C and all that. Unlike most African parents, they always come up with the fact that, oh, I was a very bright student during my time. I never get a B. I'm always getting an A or whatever. That is quite being, instructive, or you're trying to belittle the child, like, oh, I was better than you during my time. As opposed that you can be constructive and tell your child, you know what? If you were indeed a very, very smart parent during your time and you always get an A, you can tell your child, you know what? During my time, I studied so hard to get an A, but I feel like, my children can do better. And I just trust you. I just believe in you. I want to see something that comes out from me do better than I did. You know what? And if you can do this, I'm going to do this for you. You know what? I'm going to do this for you. I trust you. I believe you. Speak good words into the life of your child. No matter how bad your child is, always speak positive words into them. Don't curse your child because your child has become a prayer point to you. Instead, call them what you want to see them as.
Yes, you actually mentioned the other time about the spiritual aspect, about parents not wanting their children to do everything Bible, or religious stuff. Now, what is the place of religious beliefs or injunctions in training up a child? We know the Holy Bible talked about training up your child in the way it should go, in the way of the Lord precisely, so that when he or she grows up, he will not depart from it. Now, could you please give a breakdown of this?
Please let me know when I'm talking too much. I'm always passionate when I'm talking about children. So train up a child, as the Bible says, in the way of the Lord, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. I think Proverbs 22 verse 6. Now, first of all, we need to understand a very important fact, or a very important truth, because it is a truth, a very important truth, that Christianity is not a religion, it is a way of life. And what I mean by that is that there is no way, there is no problem in this life that the Bible has not already laid a solution for, including children's ministry. Now, when you consider Christianity as a religion and you try to separate your children from them, what you're separating them from is the truth of life. What you're separating them from is a solution of life. What you're separating them from is the basics of life. A lot of ethics and morals principles are contained in the Bible. How to dress, how to sit, how to talk, when to be quiet, when to think, the place of thinking, the place of being remorseful, the place of treating other people the way you want to be treated, the place of power, the place of position, the place of strength and weakness, the place of sickness and health. The Bible contains everything. So, can this be considered as a religion? Not exactly. This is a way of life. This is what you need to grow as a person. So the Bible is the textbook of its own. And it can be considered as a manual for a successful living. So if you try to separate your child from that, you're separating your child from principles of growth, principles of health, principles of success.
Okay, moving forward, let's talk about helping a child identify his or her skills and temperaments. So, what should parents do in this area?
Identifying their skills and temperaments. Well, for skills, I think that should be considered a very, very important thing too in parenting. You need to be able to identify your kids' skills and temperament. Talking about skills, I'll refer to them as gifts. Their gifts and talent. And this is what I would say about that. A parent should be able to pay attention. Now, I think one of the many problems that today parents have is absence. You know, most parents are not present in the life of their children, and this is what I mean. They go out in the morning and come back in the evening. They are tired. There is nothing like, "Hey, I was school today. What did you learn? Oh, was everything fine? Did anybody touch you? Did anybody insult you? What did you do wrong? What did you do right?" There is nothing like that no more because parents are busy. You know, they want to make money to foot the kind of expenses that they might not be able to really afford, or they are busy satisfying their own selves, not considering the children that did not beg them to come to this world. And so, if you don't pay attention, there is no way you'll be able to identify your children's skills. And one way to identify their skills is, like I said, pay attention. What do your kids like to do? What interests them? You need to know what interests your child. And when you start satisfying their interests, you know, satisfy their feelings in things that actually make them happy, then you kind of penetrate into, then what else does this child like? What does it like to do? Some children like to scatter and rearrange. Then you pay attention. If a child likes to scatter and rearrange, let's say from age 5, 6, 7, 8, then buy them more puzzles. Buy them more puzzles to fix. Buy them more bricks, more Legos to fix. If a child likes a lot of cars and knows all kind of cars, oh, this is Toyota, this is Mercedes, buy them toys in that same manner. Buy them more of Toyota cars or Mercedes cars or whatever. Buy them that. If your child likes to talk all the time, look for younger children too that have YouTube channels that you feel like your child can pattern their life to. And when you pay attention to that, then you can develop and advise them on the career path they might want to follow. So when you're advising them on the career path, then it becomes constructive. It becomes, oh, dad is not saying this or mom is not saying it because he wants to. But he's saying this because he has noticed me and now know or have an idea of the kind of things that I like. And talking about your children's temperament, I mean, there are various kind of temperament, that science has pointed our attention to, like melancholy, sanguine, choleric, sanclaw, melclaw, and all those stuffs. And those things are basically scientific definitions, but you can stay close to your child and know some of the things that upset him, or some of the things that upset her, or some of the things that makes her happy, or some of the things that makes him happy, or some of the things that how he or she treats people, how he or she addresses other human, how he or she addresses stranger, whether he or she is shy, whether he's bold, whether he's an introvert or an extrovert. You can pay attention to those things even without knowing what a melancholy is or what a sanguine is. You don't have to be educated in that direction to actually know your children's temperament. You can just pay attention to the skills, pay attention to the temperament. I think that's just a major factor for knowing your children's temperament and skills. Just pay attention, be there for them.
Do children have a particular language communication?
Of course. And this is really, really sad because you go to, because I'm opportune to visit several churches, and because I would like to say churches because most of the problems actually start from the church. And I realized that some of the curriculum some teachers use, and some of the ways some teachers teach, they don't come to the level of the children. Now, as a children's minister, I'm meant to understand that there's a way I'm supposed to speak to a 5-year-old to 8-year-old child. There's a way I'm supposed to speak to a 9-year-old to a 12 years old child. There's a way I'm supposed to speak to a 13-year-old, the 16-year-old teenager, and there's a way I'm supposed to speak to a 17-year-old teenager, to an 18-year-old teenager. They are different groups.
So they have their different language of communication,
They
right?
have their different language of communication. There's some words that you're supposed to use. There's some words that you're not supposed to use. There's some words you're supposed to baby. There's some words you're supposed to sugarcoat. There's some words you're supposed to come straight. There's some words you're supposed to come bending and curvy about. But most people, I don't know why, they don't know it. And you keep complaining on this train and not listening. There's no way they can listen because you're not using the appropriate language. You don't come to a 5 years old to 8 years old, for example, and you're just talking straight. You don't just work on mere curriculum teaching a child. You have to include a lot of things and a lot of activities to make them understand.
Thank you so much. So do you have a final word?
For parents, I would just say pay attention. Pay attention and be open-minded. Pay attention. Don't ever come to a destination in your life where you believe your child can never do a particular thing. Be open-minded. So pay attention and be open-minded to accepting solutions. And also, please, parents, do not separate your child from God, from the church, from Christianity, from faith. Don't do that. It's a very, very big mistake. And to children, I would just love to tell you all that Jesus loves you. That is just the truth. And if Jesus loves you, he watches over you too. And just imagine yourself doing what God does not derive pleasure in. Imagine yourself doing what God is not satisfied watching you do. So imagine him being by your side all the time when you move. So know for sure that he watches what you talk about that is bad. Know for sure that he sees what you do that is wrong. Know for sure that he watches you when you disrespect your parents. And just imagine how you make him feel. He's not necessarily going to spank you with a rod, but he's watching you and he's unhappy. You're nailing Jesus to the cross the second time. So always remember the word WWJD in all that you do, which means what will Jesus do? So thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you really. I'm really, really very grateful for your time and for this mind-blowing expose. Okay. And to you out there, thank you too for being part of the show. And I will just leave you with this. Loving a child is not by buying things, but you have to do it in a different but positive way. And for children also, like he said, what will Jesus do? And if you know that whatever you do, you will not be proud of it. So it's better to stay away from it than regret later. Until next time, I remain Ujujoke. Bye.